Hello, my name is Matthew Wellborn, and this is my video presentation based off of my final paper for Native American music. I wanted to be creative and kind of switch the roles for this video. I'm up here at the podium playing professor. But let's just go ahead and kind of dive right in to what we have to discuss today. So today we're going to be discussing singing red face and cultural appropriation, as well as idealized sympathy, racial antipathy, and cultural confusion, and a couple of other terms that are going to come up throughout the video. So let's start off and define what is singing red face. So singing red face can be said to be any time that a non-native takes on the racial archetypes of a Native American. So this can be done through the form of costumes, through mimicry, through mocking, through dress up. Here we have a young man at a sporting event who is sporting what he has probably self-described as Native American regalia, but it's inauthentic, and therein lies the issue, is that with all cases of red face, and the singing red face, we're going to be focusing specifically on music today, but with all cases of red face, we see these inauthentic representations that appear, and this causes what we're going to refer to as cultural confusion, where the average American today does not have an accurate picture in their head of what it means to be Native American and what Native American culture is. And that's because of a 500-year-long smear campaign against Native Americans. But let's move on and discuss our next topic, which is cultural appropriation, and specifically we're going to be discussing cultural misappropriations. So there's a difference, and it's a fine line, and it's a subtle line between appreciation and appropriation, or misappropriation. And that fine line is, with appreciation, a person is getting inspired by a different culture other than theirs, and is appreciating it in its true form, and is showing respect and honor to that culture. Now, with appropriation and misappropriation, that's the issue, is that these in our case today, non-Native American people, but this can happen with any culture, are taking cultural ideas such as dress, music, language, history, religion, just common themes of those cultures, and they're appropriating it into their own culture. An example of this is going to be headdresses at music festivals, which is an issue that has gained a lot of notice in the past couple of years especially. And it's an example of a cultural misappropriation. And what happens with cultural appropriation is it actually does cause harm to the appropriated culture, in the fact that it takes away their agency in deciding their own identity. Because when other people that are not part of that culture get to dictate how that culture is represented, it's going to affect the perceptions of that culture across the board. Now, we're going to be discussing specifically red face, but it's not just red face that's the issue. There are other forms of these cultural misappropriations and these mocking depictions of races and cultures. One of the most common in the American 19th century was the blackface minstrel show. This is Judy Garland, actually, best known for her role as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. This is just a little aside. she's in blackface here. In these blackface shows, what would happen is white performers would take on the costumes of African Americans and would proceed to perform unauthentic music that they used to give a representation of African American culture and slave culture. And it wasn't true and it wasn't respectful. Many of these songs were extremely hateful. In fact, a very popular blackface minstrel show performed by T.D. Rice, Jump Jim Crow, actually gave its name to the Jim Crow laws, the segregation laws in the American South. So, I mean, these are very hateful things, and they did lead to racial antipathy, which is the idea that one race is superior to another. It's also a form of racial hatred. And so these blackface minstrel shows fueled those feelings of racial antipathy against African Americans. But unfortunately, we can all, well, fortunately for this, we can all understand that this depiction of African Americans is wrong, and it's hateful, and it's inaccurate, and therefore there's no reason for anybody to partake in it anymore. And mainly as a society we have. But it still continues today in the form of red face, these minstrel shows. They've just kind of changed formats. They've changed formats, and instead of minstrel shows, it's now TV shows and movies and radio and the music industry that performs these red-faced acts. So the Hollywood and music industry portray Native Americans in many different ways, but today we're going to be focusing on two of the most popular depictions of Native Americans as seen in film and television, and also through music, is that Native Americans are portrayed as savage and uncivilized. And this is a really racially hateful idea, and it's popularized by Western films that always cast Native Americans as the backdrop bad guy of Westerns, where they are kind of the hostile obstacle in the way of the heroic white settlers that are the protagonists of those films. But then on the flip side of that coin, Hollywood also depicts Native Americans in a very sympathetic light at times, and this is a form of idealized sympathy, and it's really of a bygone era. And it treats Native Americans as an object of a bygone era, and it kind of relegates them to existing only in the period of the American West and Manifest Destiny. Going back to that first depiction, though, of the hostile savage, it really does lead to a lot of feelings of racial antipathy on the part of non-Native viewers of these films. Whenever they see Native Americans as the enemy, it gets ingrained in their head these feelings of racial hatred, consciously or subconsciously. But then the flip side, like I said, this idealized sympathy, it treats Native Americans as this imaginary group, this extinct people, that they existed during the period of Manifest Destiny, and they were run into the sea, and that was that. And that's just simply not true either. And that's a misrepresentation that is very common. So today we're going to be discussing a particular case of singing red face, vocal appreciation, as well as idealized sympathy in the form of the song Indian Reservation, the Lament of the Cherokee Reservation Indian. And it's by the group Paul Revere and the Raiders, a pop rock group. This song was recorded in 1971, but it is a cover of a earlier recorded song written originally by Native American songwriter John D. Loudermilk, and that original song was called The Pale-Faced Indian. But this song relies heavily on this depiction of Native Americans as this imaginary group that are a bygone era. But we'll get there here in a second. This song is guilty of many typical singing red-faced trappings. One of the most grievous is throughout the entire song, there's this unauthentic drum pattern that is very common in pseudo-Hollywood Native American music. And it's this 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 beat that kind of it's perpetual throughout the entire song. And it's this drumming pattern that's not even found in any Native American cultures, but it's prolific, it's ubiquitous with Hollywood Native American drumming. When people think of Native American music, they often think of that. Oh, we lost power there for a second, but I think we're back on over here, so that's good. The song is voice appropriation, where these non-native performers, I'll go back to a picture of them, here they are dressed as revolutionary continental soldiers, hence the name, Paul Revere and the Raiders. And they take on this narrative of a Native American man that's been relegated to an Indian reservation. It's a appropriation because the lyrics are not outright racist. I think very popular, or very central to the idea of the entire song is the idea of Indian removal on the Trail of Tears. And it is sympathetic to that, using the lines, "They took away our ways of life, the tomahawk and the bow and knife, took away our native tongue, and taught their English to our young." It is sympathetic to the native cause, to the Cherokee cause in this case, but unfortunately, it's still a misrepresentation. They take away cultural aspects of the Cherokee that are featured in the original recording, such as references to cradle boards, which were traditional ways that the Cherokee would carry their infants. So it takes away some of the authenticity of the original song and replaces it more with this pseudo-Hollywood idea of what a Native American is. The song, going back to the musical aspect of things, starts with this really high-pitched squeal. It's played on the organ, but it's clearly meant to represent a powwow vocalization. And again, that mixed with the inauthentic drum beat takes on this really stereotypical feeling of what Native American music is. And then the song ends by Paul Revere and the Raiders chanting about how the Cherokee Nation will return. Oh, come back on. There we go, I'm sorry about that. And it treats them like they're in this extinct nation. But that's just not the case. I mean, they're in the phone book today. You can call up the Cherokee Nation. And they're still around. They were still around in the time that this was recorded in 1971. It's this idealized sympathy that if you weren't aware, you would think that all the Cherokee are dead based on how they're singing about them. And it takes away their agency, and it takes the actual Cherokee Nation out of the conversation on what their identity in the modern world is. So moving forward though, and also in conclusion, really to combat the issues of cultural appropriation and red face, what we have to do is we have to increase education on the matter. I've grown up in Oklahoma all my life, and this class is the first opportunity that I've had to really dive deep into Native American music and culture, and I really appreciated that opportunity. But in order to undo centuries of basically propaganda against Native Americans, we just have to make sure that people are educated on what the authentic Native American culture is, and what authentic Native American music is. And then maybe we can help to combat instances of seeing red face in general. And hopefully someday those two things will be of a bygone era and no longer around. But that's my presentation. Thank you very much. I really appreciate this course and the opportunity to speak with you today. Thank you.